The end of the year is fast approaching, and I've made it my New Year's resolution to read and talk about every single Webtoon series that's come out this year, and there have been a lot. So I have a question for you. How should I talk about all of them? Would you want me to make a tier list or something scripted, maybe lumping them together by trope or genre, or do my favorites and least favorites of the year? I've opened up a poll with these options and more in my community tab, so go and vote to see which one I should do. Welcome back to Coffee Break. Welcome back, everyone, to Coffee Break. If you don't know, Coffee Break is a unscripted part recording thing that I do just to talk about every single Webtoon series that's come out this year so far. I've been doing every Webtoon of X month for the entire year, and I wanted to talk more in depth about some of these series, maybe play a little bingo game where I do a punishment if I fail to, if the series don't line up with every single trope or whatever bingo nonsense I've had. And I've been doing these for a while now, and I'm still not that good at them. But I'm glad that some of you are enjoying it. This month we're talking about September. Yes, that's what came out last month. September was a weird series for Webtoon original series, because the first half of the month was like really bad. The first half of the month was like, oh man, these series aren't that good. And I thought I just became jaded. I thought I was like, I'm over Webtoon series. Like it's the end of the year. We're fast approaching like me just being jaded and like, another series that's come out. But then randomly, like out of nowhere, the later half of this month just became some of the favorites of the year. So it was like a weird, like we went so low, but we went so back up high. So we're going to get into some of the series that's come out, or all the series. Remember, we're going in order of if I haven't read them, or if I'm not currently subscribed to them, if I would subscribe to them, and if I am subscribed to them. But before we get any further, we play a game of bingo, like I mentioned before. Bingo, I collect a bunch of tropes and different genres and different little things and cliches I've seen in Webtoon original series. I put them in a bingo sheet, and then we get to play bingo with all the series that come out in this month. I have failed once so far, so I still have to do a punishment. I keep on forgetting. But I have to do a punishment if I fail, voted by you guys in the comments. So, and I randomize it right here in front of everyone, so you see that I'm not cheating. Hopefully you guys trust me enough to know that I won't. Oh, and the free space is going to be an isekai, because every month has an isekai. So we're going to randomize it right now, and here are our series, and I'm going to put a little fancy graphic up on screen now to show what our series are. But we're going to get into our first series of the month, which is At Arm's Length. At Arm's Length is kind of a sad series, really, because our main character tries to take his own life and then ends up in a psych ward, and then he's released afterwards, and then, you know, he's just kind of released back into his slightly messed up life. It's sad. It's just kind of sad. It's a mature series. Oh, it's rated mature. It's just generally pretty sad, as this person who kind of had a bad life tried to take his own life and then really just went to like a thing and then left kind of seemingly unchanged. But it's not, I just didn't enjoy it, I guess. There's a reason I didn't pick it up. And I think nothing hooked me on it. The characters didn't seem all that interesting or exciting. The plot didn't. Nothing about it was like, oh, this is an engaging and interesting series that I should pick up. No, not really. Not really. It's just kind of like a bummer of a series that I didn't fully enjoy all that much. And I know I'm not gonna read and enjoy every single series that comes out in a year or in a month or in a day, but man, I always go into a series expecting, like, not expecting good things, but I always go into series with an open mind. And I feel bad when I don't enjoy a series super well. Everyone also looks like a villain, by the way. I have to say, everyone just looks like a villain in this series. Like, their eyes are drawn in such a narrow and sharp way that I'm like, oh, that person's gonna be a villain. But even our main character looks like that. Overall, this didn't grab my attention in the way a lot of other series this month did. So we can move on to our next series. When the Mad Emperor Holds Me. is another kind of weird series where a female lead was the princess of a nation, but then her half-brother kind of usurps the throne in a sense, and then kind of just like tortures our main character weirdly. And then after like months of torturing her, he's like, I'm sick of this. You're not doing anything. You're not breaking. I'm gonna exile you. But when you exile royalty, or when you exile people in this sense, I guess, you cut off their feet for some weird reason. I don't know what this is about. You cut off their feet to exile them. So she's about to get her feet cut off, but then the emperor of another nation comes in and is like, hey, you're gonna be my date to the prom. You're gonna be like the date to whatever like ball is going on. Here's the emperor, and here's the right hand man, I guess, of the emperor. Hot take, I'm not sure how much of a hot take this is. I think the blue-haired person might be the emperor. Mainly because like the beginning panels show this dude, and this dude feels like emperor that kind of ran away kind of thing, and it feels like more of a setup for them to be kind of in a relationship, even though now looking about it, he is like at least 18 and she is a child, so never mind. I don't like that theory anymore. It's if you like the royalty kind of aspect of series, those like treaties and learning about like different alliances and things like that, this is not a bad series. The characters seem pretty cool. The blue-haired boy, now saying it, has some moments of like, oh, I don't know if I trust him 100%, but overall it wasn't a bad series, and I think there is an audience for this that isn't the person who's read every single Webtoon series that's come out this year. But it's overall good. I did enjoy what I did read. I just didn't get hooked onto it. And that's not a problem with the series. I think if someone enjoys this series, I can understand why. But there is a big thing about reading series that I should explain is that I'm not looking for a 10 out of 10. I'm looking for something that keeps me engaged or keeps me like reading. It keeps me interested in enough to follow the series for next week's episode. I think that's the biggest hurdle you have to overcome when you're making a series, is not introducing interesting characters or an interesting plot or a mystery or good art. I don't have good word now. Good art or anything like that. I think it's getting me interested and waiting a week for the next episode. Because if you do that, you basically get me for the rest of your series. I will very rarely drop a series. And that's I think the biggest thing with me when it comes to these series is, am I interested enough to wait for next week to come and then to continue reading this? And I think no. I wasn't super interested in this to wait like another week to see the next part. But it doesn't mean it's not good. It doesn't mean it's not bad. It doesn't mean it is bad. It just kind of means I wasn't interested in staying around, if that makes sense. But we can move on to our next series. I feel like, sorry if I ramble about like not liking series. I feel bad when I don't like series because like I know people spend a lot of time on this and I'm like, oh, I'm the guy who likes all series. You know, we could just move on to our next series. Our night shifts is, I think this is the best way I've described the series in a short, calling it a goofy HR violation, which I think is a perfect way to describe the series. This series is a office romance following a boss and his secretary. Both people are madly in love with each other. Both the secretary and the boss love each other so much, but they're both like convinced that the other person doesn't actually like them, because the reason they love each other is because they spend all this time together during night shift, and they use night shift as an excuse to hang out with each other. But they confuse each other's passion for night shift for just being passionate about work. So they're just like, oh, but they don't like me, they just like money, and they just have a good work ethic. And I think that's kind of funny. The thing is, it's not a series that takes itself super seriously, so it's definitely like, it doesn't feel as HR violation as other series can be, because it feels goofy. And because it feels goofy, it can kind of like slide behind the like, oh, it's a boss and a secretary. That's kind of an iffy kind of a relationship romance. But since it's so goofy, it doesn't feel so bad. And also because neither of them are like, they're both very interested in each other, but neither of them are outwardly doing anything about it. So it's just like a-okay that it feels like this. Also, the main thing is like, oh goodness, it got time to get to the end. The main thing is that he starts his own night shift to do work with her just to like hang out with her more, which I feel like is extra steps to being like, she loves work. We should do another night shift. We should do our own private night shift. And like nothing actually happens during the night. Oh, I guess, you know, romance is gonna happen during the night shift. But like nothing, like he doesn't intend for things to happen. He just wants to do work and wants to work with this girl. And I think that's kind of funny. It's pretty funny. I do enjoy this series. I didn't pick it up for, I honestly don't even know why I didn't pick it up. It's goofy and it's fun. And it's not bad. Romance has always kind of been a weird situation for me, where romance gets so it gets so boring after a little bit of time, because there's only so many times I can see two people fall in love and be like, yeah, it's kind of the same thing over and over and over again. That's why I look for kind of different takes. That's why, oh my god, school romances have been getting on my nerves, because I read too many school romances before, and they haven't ended, so I'm just still reading these two people that have fallen in love, and then they had a fight, and they're not talking anymore, and then they fell back in love, and then some situation happens where they're not bonding anymore, and a miscommunication happens. It's just, and I think I'm hesitant on reading this because I don't want that to happen with office romances, because after school and office, there's just a third wild card type of romance. It's like nebulous, like whatever kind of romance you find, whatever meet cute happens. Overall, it was pretty fun when I read it, and I'm sure people enjoy it as well. We can move on to our next series. You Can't Kill Me, The Secret Bride of the Black Wolf is the first bingo thing, because oh my god, that title is too long. What is that title? There's the colon thing in that title. I know another series has the colon thing, but like, what is that title? The Secret Bride of the Black Wolf, which is what I'll call it instead of You Can't Kill Me, The Secret Bride of the Black Wolf, surprisingly is a regression series where a female lead dies, but actually dies in like the real thing, and then like the underworld is like feudal Korea, and then she gets married to a dude who seems like to be like the prince of the place, and she hates him, and then she dies again, and then she gets reincarnated to try to avoid marrying him again, but then I think fails, and then they get married again, and then she dies, and we follow her third regression. Honestly, kind of a cool way of doing it. I think another cool thing is that her entire family gets sent to the underworld, quote unquote, or like feudal underworld, whatever nonsense. And I think the main thing is this dude becomes kind of like the main love interest of her. And then it's the classic like, oh, I have to like marry or get into a relationship with someone else to avoid my toxic relationship. So she's like, you seem important, marry me. It's fine, it's okay. Every other kind of like regression series has the same kind of vibe to it. People die. I think the biggest interest is her entire family goes into the underworld. The underworld is the place she gets quote unquote isekai'd into, and it's feudal Korea somehow. And it's her third time during a regression, or her third regression, which I think those three things are they're not unique independently, but they're pretty cool together, and I think that could be a cool storytelling mechanic. But I just didn't continue reading it because I feel like, looking at this panel, I don't think I'm the target demographic here. We can move on to our next series. Is it good? It is not good. Behind Her Highness's Smile is weird. It's pretty weird. The plot is a little confusing to understand, but the general idea is this dude is our male main character's father, and he helps secure a victory for the crown or kingdom or emperor or whatever, this dude. So this dude is like, you know what, I'm gonna reward you with my sister's hand and in his marriage, right? I don't know why that stuttered me out. And everyone's like, whoa, his sister? We didn't even know he had a sister. We thought she died. We haven't seen her in this long time. But we want to get married? And everyone's like, oh, she's alive, don't worry. But she's like frail and ill and acts like an animal? Kind of almost like a weird, like a dog in a sense, where she's kind of like almost always like tranquilized with like drugs, and like she doesn't act human. She barks. It's weird. It's really weird. And it's like, oh man. And then they get married, and I'm not gonna show that. And then like she goes over to his place, and like she lives with him because they're married. But then like everyone thinks she's insane, and like the entire family is like, oh, she's weird. It's a confusing series. And like he doesn't want to be like intimate with her because she kind of acts like a child, because she's traumatized because her entire family was killed in front of her. Like, get over it. It's a weird series of like, this is kind of strange. And like she acts animalistic, and it's this is a funny battle, but it's like, it's a weird series. It's just a weird series, and there's a lot of weird series that Webtoon has. And I guess in the overarching spectrum of weird series that Webtoon has made, it's not the weirdest one, but it is certainly strange. And I didn't know how to feel about it, so I think I just read like everything that came out and then just booked it out of there. If you like this series, please let me know why. It's not even like you're wrong for liking the series. It's more just I want to know what your thought process is reading this series and why it is different from my thought process, because my thought process is very different. Yet again, I just think, looking at this panel, I don't think I'm the person who this is marketing to, but hey, I mean, certainly like someone's interested in this, because it has a decent rating. It's like an 8. I think it's a 7. But like overall, that's not a bad rating. So it's like, why are people so interested in this? And I want to know why. I want to know. But we can move on to our next series. In Between it's a bit of a weird series, but not weird like the last one. It's following two childhood best friends who, you know, the male is like super handsome and like everyone loves him and like everyone wants to date him, and then our female lead is just like, oh, he's annoying, but like we've been childhood best friends. Also, she's fallen in love with him because, you know, of course, childhood best friends, yada yada yada. And he's like treated as royalty, and then she's like, I don't want to be near him, but I also want to be near him. But like it's like, oh, okay, I have a little bit of a crush on him, and then for her birthday she kind of asks him out, but his reaction is just like, so he's like shocked that she asked him out, and then she's like, ha ha, just kidding, ha, and then she's like, I take it back, that was just a joke, and then she's like, oh no, I never again will I be in a relationship, which is why it's under I put it under chronically single. Chronically single is a trope in Webtoon, where this is something I've tried to make, or I've kind of noticed, is a trope in Webtoon where it is a romance series that focuses on people who actively don't want to be in a relationship or haven't been in a relationship with it for a long time because of some problems they've had in relationships. There's a lot of series like this. Not Interested in Dating is one of them. There was another one by the same author as Romance 101 where it's like, we haven't been in a relationship for a long time because of this reason or that reason, but there's a reason behind not being in a relationship other than, oh, I just couldn't find anyone, that kind of thing. Where it's just kind of such a point of the series that they are not in a relationship. And that's why I put it under chronically single. And I think that makes sense. Also, he seems really weird. Like, as a character, the idea is that they moved away and then he came back, and he's just like, kind of like it feels like a player in a sense. Like, he just kind of like makes out with her like truly the first second. He makes out with a different girl in front of her like the first time they're having an open conversation. And then later he just like, oh, I'm not dating anyone. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not dating anyone. And it's just like, who are you? What's going on here? What's going on? I don't trust you. I don't trust you. It does feel like he's a bad guy in a sense, but knowing this series and knowing like the vibe it has, I assume they get together some points. And then maybe, I think it might be an interesting like, oh, do they realize like they're not a good fit for each other kind of thing? But I doubt it. But we can move on to our next series. Red Spine is misclassified. I don't know why it's not in sci-fi. It should be in sci-fi. We follow a more like futuristic world, and we follow the, oh goodness, what are they called? The Saviors, I think they're called? Where they fight against these like massive like, oh yeah, a savior. Saviors, and they fight against these like almost like smoke cloud monster clawed darkness creature things. And they use these like electronic lightning blasts to take them out. And our main character is struggling in the fighting aspect, but like mental health wise, he's not doing good. He's cut up and bleeding and brutalized. Like there's all this stuff that like he's clearly not having a good time. And it's brutal. It definitely is very brutal. It's under mature for a reason. You could look at this. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. The art is cool. The world building is cool. The monsters look pretty cool. But there's a line of like, how brutal is too brutal for me? And I think this series did cross it for me. But it's not like in a sense of too much to be like a problem for I think most people. Just for me. Also, it is technically a mature series, so it means that like you're gonna have to be 18 plus to read it. But not because like, oh, it shows inappropriate things like childhood friend complex. No, just because there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of gore, and there's a lot of like excessiveness. But overall, I thought it was pretty cool. I just didn't have anything that like really clung on to me that made me want to keep on reading it. But we can move on to our next series. The Holy Emperor's grandson is a Necromancer. It's an isekai, and it's fine. It has a cool first opening scene where the grandson who has holy powers and an army also has a gun. But somehow it doesn't live up to that hype, unfortunately, where a dude gets isekai'd as into the body of kind of just like a troublemaker, and then he dies, but then when he gets restored, he's like, oh, everyone thinks he's okay, and he also has the powers to like raise the dead kind of thing because of his like one of the classes in a video game. For some reason, I don't really, it doesn't make sense for him to have necromantic powers, I guess. Like in universe, it didn't seem like this character has necromantic powers anyways. So it's fine. There's a lot of series I think that are trying to ride on the coattail of the Greatest State Developer. And this does feel like a series that it has like a similar vibe, or it kind of has a similar vibe. And then, oh my goodness, when he uses a shovel to fight, oh my goodness, everyone just kept on making the comparison. It's fine, I guess. Overall, it's okay. I just didn't care for it to continue reading. It had some cool moments, like some of the necromantic powers is cool, and some of the holy powers mixing with the necromancy powers is cool. But like other than that, I didn't really want to keep reading it. But you know, that's just kind of me. If you like it, you like it. We can move on to our next series. Mindful Love is a cool romance, I'll say. It has a cool premise and a cool idea. It takes place in the mind. Ooh, in the mind. It takes place in the brain. And it follows two people, or emotions, I guess. Sorrow and Anxious. First of all, gotta say, hate that her name is Anxious. It's just such an annoying way to say anxiety. I understand why you don't want to say anxiety instead of anxious, especially now with like Inside Out 2. But like, man, it's just every part of my body when I start saying anxious, say anxiety. Because I think that's a better way of that's a better name for someone than anxious. But we follow sadness and we follow anxious. Very, this feels like a me in comparison. Very Lore Olympus. It has a very similar kind of vibe to it. Everyone is a different like bright color. It has a unique premise. Very sad boy with very bright girl. You know, that kind of sunshine, what is it? Sunshine, rain cloud shipping. And overall, I think it's a cool premise. I guess I just didn't have a reason to continue reading it other than like, oh, cool premise. That kind of it. That's, in my mind, that's basically it for me. But overall, I thought it was pretty cool. But I think coolness alone doesn't get you far. Like, coolness alone won't get you to continue reading the series for me. Like, Red Spine was pretty cool. There are other series that came out this year that were pretty cool. I just didn't like coolness alone, or a cool prompt or premise or trope won't get me to continue reading the series. But overall, I don't think I disliked what was going on with Mindful Love, and I thought a lot of people liked it, and it was a Candace Greenlight, which is, you know, check it off the bingo thing if I didn't say that yet. So, like, overall, I think, oh, you know what? I kind of like that logo. There's a big thing where, like, this is a complete tangent. A lot of Webtoon logos, or like, I guess title card logos, look kind of bad. It's just kind of like the name of the series and nothing else. Or maybe like some sparkles around it, or maybe, ooh, a fancy way of writing this series. But like, other than that, it's kind of just like, oh, fine, whatever. And of course, Sadness has cats, by the way. Like, okay, but that was kind of a cool logo for it. I'm not gonna mark it down as a cool logo. I know that's on the bingo, but I think it was a cooler logo. And of course, Anxious is, yeah, okay, makes sense. We can move on to our next series. My Stepdaughter is a Bunny is another kind of tropey series where our main character gets isekai'd into a book she read, and she gets isekai'd as the villain, which is a bingo card, baby, woo! The idea is that she gets isekai'd into the body of someone who hates werebeasts, and there's a lot of werebeasts in this world because she marries a werebeast. She marries I believe a werewolf, and has a werebunny stepdaughter. I'll say the biggest reason why this series isn't under not reading and would read is the stepdaughter. The stepdaughter is genuinely one of my favorite characters in this series. It's just like an adorable little bunny that is like super like hyper carnivorous. So it's just like this cute little bunny. Look at how cute this bunny is. It's so cute. Like that, genuinely the bunny is the biggest reason why this is in wood. Because one thing, and there's definitely one thing I've noticed really gets me in a lot of series, and it's found family. Found family will get me in a lot of different series, because I just don't know. I like the idea that romance and not romance, but love is bigger than just like, oh, falling in love with a handsome person, but it's finding family. That's why I really like, my in-laws are obsessed with me as well. The idea of found family, oh, it's so good. It's so good. And I think this series does a pretty good job as well, especially with the bunny having like such a personality, such like a good personality that I really enjoy as well, which is the biggest reason why I was like, oh, I would consider picking this up. But other than that aspect, I think it's, you know, very stereotypical of other isekai into the book as a villain series. You know, she's disliked by a lot of people, and a lot of people don't trust her, but, you know, through her personality, she becomes better, and everyone starts to win. She starts to win everyone's approval, yada yada yada. I don't think it's a bad trope, because I read a lot of those tropes. I just think, you know, I've read so many of those tropes, and it's less that I've read so many that I am reading so many. And because I am reading so many that I'm like, okay, I'll pass for now. Because you know what? The next series is another one of these series. Yippee! Trapped in a soap opera is the same thing as before. Our female lead dies and gets reincarnated or isekai'd into the body of a villain, but not from a book, but from a soap opera. Woo! Yay! Same kind of thing. I think the biggest difference is she gets isekai'd into it, like, into a point where she's already done a lot of bad things, and it's like in the middle of the story comparatively, so she has to like very quickly get her life back up to speed before she dies. You know, it's kind of the same thing as every other series where someone gets isekai'd into the body of a villain, whether it be a soap opera or a book or a video game. They're kind of all a very similar aspect. Overall, I don't think it's a bad series. I think it's very pretty. It also has a trash show. Woo! I think the biggest thing with these series is that the main character of the actual thing they get isekai'd into. So like the main character, the book they get isekai'd into. Since they're the villain, the main character somehow like slightly takes the villain role. You know, a typical reincarnation story. This one, there's a different one. There's like 5 other ones. You know, they somehow, like, the main character somehow becomes the villain. The main character of the world that our main character. It's a confusing thing. And honestly, it's our Trashta, by the way, is like so wildly like evil sometimes. Like she looks so weirdly like creepy. Like there's like panels where she looks like a villain, and it's like is she actually a villain? And it's like, oh, she might be a villain. Sorry, there was a loud noise I had to cut. I can understand it being popular to a lot of people. Just, you know, I've read so many of them, and I'm currently reading so many of them that it doesn't stand out comparatively, and I don't really. It's that I don't want to keep on reading this series every week for I don't know, probably years of my life. It doesn't grasp me like that compared to other series. But we can move on to our next series. DevilUp is weirdly interesting because of maybe drama. Now, DevilUp follows a main character who signs a deal with the devil after he dies and fails to protect his home. He gets sent back up with the devil's powers to collect souls for the devil. By the way, does the devil count as a demon lord? Because I feel like he should for my bingo thing. This dude, he ends up in hell because he doesn't use his powers, and then he's like, haha, the devil's like, haha, you fool, you put your trust on people, and then now it's your fault, kind of thing. There's the devil. Now, I thought it was okay. I genuinely thought it wasn't bad. I looked at it and I thought it had a lot of cool potential. Now, something I think I was surprised by is this thing's rating. I think there's a lot of series that kind of deserve a low rating. This series has like a 3, and that's really low for a series. Like, that's bottom of the barrel for a series. There are some really weird series that have way more than a 3, so I was like, I remember this being not bad. Why does it have a 3? Now, I don't really know anything about this series other than some comments and a brief look into it. It seems like the series was originally on a different platform and then stopped updating and then came to this platform with a different art style that seems worse, or maybe like someone said traced, but I don't think so. I doubt it'd be traced. First of all, this looks cool. This looks pretty cool. So I think that's why it has a lot of hate, because it was originally from a different platform, and I assume the art is not as good as or people think the art was better in the other one, and they hate that it's here, or maybe some drama about it being traced. I have no idea. But that's why it's like hated. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think it would be this hated. But now I can kind of see why people are like, oh, but it looked better over there, and now over here it's not as good. I think that's fair for people who are like, who like this series, and then now it doesn't look as good. That's kind of my thought on some series that get like an anime, and then the anime is just kind of like mid. But I really liked the original manga. So I can see why people are upset about this transition. I think giving it a 3 is wild. There are some series that do not deserve to be higher than this one, because this one was okay. It was all right. It was fine. But the other series are not. So the fact that this has a 3 is wild to me. Overall, it's okay. I think it's okay. I can understand people being hyped for it, but I can also understand people not super liking it, because I didn't really like it. But if you're hating it because it was originally on a different platform, maybe I'm wrong. I think I might be wrong about this. If you know what's happened with this series, please let me know, because this is a very confusing thing that I've just found out about 2 minutes ago, just reading some Webtoon comments. But we can move on to our next series. Even When I'm Dead is a royal regression romance revenge series where a female lead dies, or female lead has a bad life, dies, goes back in time to get revenge on the people who've wronged her, and to like somehow not die again. From what I remember about this series, our female lead has the unique ability to touch people and gain either what they're thinking or like learn about their past somehow a little bit. That was a cool premise, and she wore gloves because she didn't want to do that with a lot of people, but her fiance and her best friend cheated on her with each other, and then her best friend became pregnant, and then they're like, hey, you should break up with him so I could marry him. And then she dies, I think unrelated to them, like she gets pushed down a flight of stairs, and then she keeps on dying over and over and over and over and over again. And then she's like, okay, I'm going to make it my goal to find my killer, versus I'm going to make it my goal to get revenge on them. Which I think is an interesting take on the regression revenge. I think that's a cool logo, but I like the sword and the W. That's besides the point. Overall, it's a royal regression revenge romance series. She dies, she goes back in time, she has some knowledge of the future to help avoid her death. Comparatively, it's not as regression heavy. Well, I guess technically it is way more regression heavy because there's so many types of regressions that happen throughout the series, but also it's not as regression heavy as in I know the future, because she really only knows like, I guess like a few months at most in the future, compared to a lot of people who know like years ahead and they can plan really far ahead and get all this stuff. But I did enjoy what I did read. But this is a funny series because it came out alongside 2 other series. Webtoon posted 3 series in one day, which is great for most people, annoying for me because I had to read 3 different series in one day. This one and 2 other on our not our 2 next ones, but our next one, and then one that I did actually pick up. So we can move on to our next series. Man, Regression of a Close Combat Mage was this close to being pretty cool and being interesting to read, and it fumbled the ball. The Regression of a Close Combat Mage takes place, first of all, is a regression action series, I should mark that off, but also it takes place in a world where people use magic, and then it's like the end of the world, and the God of Death. Does the God of Death count as the Demon Lord? I need to know this. Does he count as the Demon Lord? Can I put him on the bingo card? God of Death comes with his army, and then our main character and his like strongest, last hope, the strongest mages, they're all like magic projectile attackers, are here to stop the Lord of Death. But then they fail because he has the ability to disintegrate ranged magic, and then they all die. And then when he's just about to like give up, he punches him with some magic and he hurts him, because it turns out that the God of Death can't disintegrate magic when it's like infused or like melee magic. So then our main character goes back in time because of an artifact that the headmaster gave him. He goes back in time and he chooses a different school of magic. Compared to before, he chose ranged magic, but now he chooses melee magic. Now, I'll say, cool premise, because melee magic is really looked down upon, because no one likes melee magic. Comparatively, you have to get up close, there's all this like extra stuff that you have to do for it to be effective compared to ranged magic. I like this because it's kind of the opposite of mythic item obtained or hitting class gravity, gravity user, hidden class gravity user. I think that's what it's called. It's kind of the opposite of that, where instead of choosing a very popular and a very, in the future, a very popular and very useful class or skills or whatever, instead, what the heck am I listening to? Instead of choosing a very popular and a very useful one that a lot of people agree on, he chooses a very niche one that will only be really effective with one kind of big threat that he knows will be a big threat and he has to take care of, but he's gonna struggle a lot throughout learning how to use this very different and very, very niche and honestly weaker magic system, but he doesn't. That's the biggest thing. I think we don't see him struggle is the thing. Like, we see him learning and practicing how to use it, but truly the first time he's in a magic fight, he like gets magic like immediately. Like, he understands how to use the magic as soon as right off the bat. He understands how to move, he understands how to fight, he understands like, and he becomes better. And like, what's the point? Like, it's you had a cool premise where if he should have lost this fight. Like, I think it would have been way cooler if he lost this fight, because he doesn't A, know what he's doing, B, it should be a class that is weaker than most other classes. Like, it's widely talked about that this is not as good as other classes. Like, there's so many different parts of it that are struggling, and then as the series goes on, he learns how to A, use it effectively, and B, learns how to navigate against ranged magic users, and maybe, hey, he learns how to cut magic right off the bat. I think that would have been cool to learn later down the line. Like, he doesn't struggle enough with this magic class, and that's what it really got me. I think if he did, I think if he lost this fight, I think if he struggled to learn how to use it, it would have been way cooler, because then it feels like an actual downgrade instead of, oh, he went back in time and he chose this, basically the same thing, just with a different coat of paint kind of thing. And that's my biggest issue with it. You know, I think it had a cool premise, and I think it was very exciting to see where it could have gone, but it, you know, it fumbled the ball a little, and that's the biggest problem I had with it. But we can move on to our next series. The Last Passage is our first horror series of the month, but it's not going in horror series. You know what's going in? It's going in intimate scene, for reasons that I will get to. The Last Passage takes place in the afterlife. A lot of series take place in the afterlife, I've realized, but it takes place in the afterlife, specifically these 3 rivers that you go to if you've taken your life at a young age. And all our characters there have taken their lives at a young age, and they're all on this raft, and they have to get from island to island, and eventually meet a Grim Reaper that will bring them to the end so they get to get reincarnated. That's the idea. Now, out of all of the islands that are 2 main characters, because we have this one, this is not our main character, this is our Grim Reaper, but these two are our main characters. They both taken their life and both ended up here, but they end up in this island. This is the first island. Very pretty shot, by the way. This is the first island they end up in. How much of this can I show, I wonder? They end up on an island that is very beautiful, and it's illegal or not allowed to have negative emotions. And everyone, like, all the drinkable water is alcohol. Let me scope out this character. There's this character. I'm not gonna show more than this panel of this character, because her attire is pretty loose. And then there's intimate scenes that happen afterwards. It's genuinely, it can be a little bit of a spooky series, but it's more of just an uncomfortable series, I'll say. And the art is really cool, and I think the premise is pretty cool as well, following Grim Reapers and they're fighting and all this stuff. It's horror, but it's also horny. So there's a reason why I didn't continue reading this series. We can move on to our next series, though. My Best Friend is an Eldritch Horror is actually a pretty cool series. I think it's a pretty solid series that when I say would read, here's what I think I mean. I mean in different circumstances, I would check it out and continue reading it, or I will put it alone, put it by the side, continue to read other series, but every couple months come back to the series and then quickly binge everything that's come out, and then oh no, not the knockoff Pokemon plushes, and then every couple months just quickly catch up and see what's happening. I think that's what I would do with this series, where it has a cool premise where magic is in this world and you can use magic, but only when you summon a companion, and these companions get to make you use magic. And there's different types of companions, from like elementals to like darkness ones. Our main character dies because he summons a companion from the void, which is our Eldritch horror. And his name, no joke, is Henry. His name is Henry. Oh boy, he's a void monster from the void, and his name is Henry. And he kind of almost tries to trick our main character into taking over his body, and then like causing all this horror to happen in the world. But then he actually doesn't do that, and he gets to like, our main character is pretty clever, where he like kind of outsmarts this void monster. He's like, hey, we should make a deal where we're equals, and that way you won't die, and like we'll both be bonded. And that happens, and I think it's pretty cool to see that happening. Overall, I am enjoying what this series is about, and there's a lot of cool things that I did see. The void monster talks. There's a cool part where when they're bonding, they kind of both like experience each other a little bit. They were one. He got to see like what it was like to be in like the void and darkness and all that stuff. But then the void monster Henry got to see what it was like to be like a human, to see emotion, to see life. And like it was like a cool kind of scene here where it's like these two, like this void monster, this eldritch horror, and a person that is human, kind of bonded in an interesting way. And then it cuts years later, I guess, to him going to a magic academy, and then him learning how to actually use his magic and how to use his companion magic, who is asleep, by the way, who has not said a word. Henry has not spoken all this time. And he still hasn't, actually. Ever since the beginning, still hasn't. And they're going to a school where they're going to learn all this stuff. I think it's going to be cool. I think it's a cool series. I think there's a lot of cool things in it. I will be excited to like come back and see, oh, where is it? Where is our main character? Where is Henry at? And in different circumstances, I think I would have picked it up. But I just didn't because I have a lot on my plate anyways. We can move on to our next series. To Drown You is a thriller series. It's actually like a mermaid thriller series where our main character befriends a mermaid while growing up, and then the mermaid becomes yandere and is like super obsessed with making her happy, to the point where he like vents things to her, and then she's like, I know how to get rid of that problem. I'm just gonna kill them. So like she drowns his aunt, two like thugs that are harassing him. She saves his sister when she's about to get run over by a car. Like she does all this stuff, and it's like unclear if he's actually seeing her, like if she exists. But like there are too many things where like she has to exist for her sister to be saved, for like these thugs to go away. Like she has to exist, but she can appear in like any source of water, so she's like always watching him. So that's why like you see like little things that are like, she's technically always a threat. Like when it's raining, for example, he says he can't speak because it's raining and he's afraid of water. So like the series is kind of like him eventually like becoming fearful of him, of her. Like eventually like every source of water is like a threat to him. So everything she does, like he's just afraid of water at a certain point, because you know, there's always gonna be a mermaid that could drown someone that's right next to him. And it's actually really cool, and I thought it was sick. I didn't pick it up because I'm just not a horror thriller guy, but there's a lot of cool things that this series has in store, and it is very much a series that like, oh, I think I will like come back to it. Like I will come back and see where it is so far. See, even here, like, oh, there's someone pulled me down and I fell. Someone tripped me and almost made me like crash or die. You know, like all this stuff, like he becomes afraid of the water. All this stuff it's really cool, and he's just I think it's worth checking out if you like the thriller side, and you think, hey, mermaids are cool, kind of like mermaids are technically like sirens in a sense, and it's pretty fun to see. We can also move on to our next series. the perfect contract is fake dating. Yay, we love ourselves some fake dating. The female lead, she breaks male lead's watch because she accuses him of stealing her underwear, because someone keeps on stealing her underwear, so she kind of like makes them meet, and then he accidentally comes at the same time that she was supposed to encounter the underwear thief, and then like he gets pinned down, and then the watch breaks, and then they find out, he's not the underwear thief, he's not the pervert, oh no, and then so it's like, now you broke a very fancy watch of like a businessman or whatever nonsense, and you have to pay it back, and then you gave the wrong number, and the right number is the number you gave is accidentally like a cryptocurrency scheme kind of thing. So it's like, it's just them like bonding and learning to like each other, you know, that kind of thing. It's all right. It's another office romance. I think if I would pick up an office romance, I'd probably pick up Our Night Shift comparatively. I don't know, but I think it's not bad. Like, it's definitely not a bad series, and I did enjoy, especially later on in the series, them bonding together is actually pretty sweet. And them like learning to be friends first, and eventually like the fake dating, or it's fake dating, contractual dating. It's enjoyable, and I do like both of their personalities, how they can feed off each other. And like she's a very good wordsmith, unlike me. She's very good at like very good on her feet, where she's like here she pretends she's part of like a crypto, or not a cryptocurrency, like a pyramid scheme, and like this thing where it's like, oh look, we have amazing opportunity, you know, all this fun stuff, you want to be successful, right? And then she pretends that her boss is at the top of the pyramid scheme. It's enjoyable. There's a lot of enjoyable moments in the series. I just didn't pick it up because it's another office romance, and I thought like comparatively to other things, it has a lot of personality. I just didn't think it had anything super interesting about it. But we can actually finally get into series I did pick up this month, and we got some bangers this month. Guardian Girl is a series I think is very hypocritical for me to like, because I talk a lot about school romances and school bullying and all this stuff, and I talk about how I'm just not super interested in that kind of thing. But then Guardian Girl comes up and is like, well, okay, I can like them sometimes. Guardian Girl focuses on, I don't know her name, but like a very like the black sheep girl. She looks depressed, well, she looks emotionless, she doesn't look like she's doing anything, but then she dies. It's not Chuck Gun, dang, it's a car. She dies, but then she's not dead, and she's fine, she's covered in blood, and she just leaves. It turns out she's immortal. She still feels all the pain of death, but every time she does die, she just gets back up and is a-okay. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting premise where she can't actually die. And then she kind of just loses emotion as time goes on, and then she bonds with Mr. Popular over here, Sunshine Golden Retriever Boy, who is like the only person who like actively tries to befriend her. But then it turns out that he keeps on putting himself in situations of death. Like the first time is he's on top of a building, and they're talking about like how people take their own lives, and he's just like, I just wanted to see like how it is looking from down, and then he slips, and then she catches him. But then there's like different moments of like a brick almost hits him on the head, or he's in an exhibit and a tiger gets out, or there's like wires that are connected to wires that have fallen into like a puddle of water he's about to step in. And basically the entire series is her being a guardian to him, basically him being in almost these life or death situations, and her having to protect him or save him from those situations. And it kind of goes later into like maybe he's the reason for her curse, and also maybe someone else's curse, and that other person is trying to trick or kind of bait him into dying so that they're both free from that curse. So it's like, oh, it's an interesting, I think maybe as the series goes on, he's gonna realize that her deaths are actually causing him pain, or her deaths are actually causing her pain, because of course she's being hurt. But like but she lies and says like, oh, I don't feel pain when I die. And I think as time goes on, he's gonna notice that she feels pain, and then the other cursed guy is gonna come up to him and be like, hey, she's suffering because you you wanted. I think the idea was that he wished that he had a friend that would never die or something along those lines. I don't remember if that's just pure speculation or if that was actually like a flashback, but I remember there being like a moment where he's like, oh, I wish I had a friend that was always with me, or like a friend that never died or something. And I think that caused him, her, and I think maybe a different dude who's possibly a cat. There's this cat who is possibly a person. And he talks about like that it'll be all over soon, and then that's when the tiger shows up. So it's like, oh, it could be that he accidentally wished or cursed her to be immortal so that they wouldn't die, and XYZ. Oh, here's why. Because someone died, because if he'd done better, his friend wouldn't have had to do that. His friend wouldn't have had to die. I think it's like, it's just, I wish she could appear before me as if nothing happened. This idea that, I wish the person I was friends with, I could have saved, that kind of thing. And I think that's really cool. And I think I'm very excited to see where this eventually goes. It is probably a school romance, and it is definitely a school bullying series, which is, I think, the reason I'm like, fine, I have to pick it up, because I'm just so interested in seeing where it's gonna go. But Guardian Girl, pretty cool, pretty good. We can move on to our next series. The Genius Murim Fitness Trainer is an isekai, where we follow a jacked dude. He's full jacked. This dude was part of like the military. He got injured. He worked through physical therapy and rehabilitation, and then eventually became like a gym bro. He's very excited. And then the pandemic hits. And he can't go to like the gym. He can't do all this stuff. So he has to become a streamer. And then he's about to lose his hair because of his stress. Or he's gonna be bald. And then one of the things he's like, what relieves stress? Is Murim, right? I always butcher Murim. Murim books. And he reads a new one called something with a monk. The new Shaolin he starts reading, and then he accidentally gets transported into the world, and then he kind of uses physical therapy techniques like how to stretch correctly, how to move correctly, how to exercise correctly, in order to kind of teach a bunch of other monks how to be like safe and how to use their bodies in a healthy way. Now it is a martial arts series, and I think that's Bingo, by the way, which got him. Got him. It is a series, I think, that is good, but if you're not enjoying it, I can understand why, because it is getting there very slowly. It is establishing a solid base before continuing. And it is taking some time to get up to speed to that. But I think it will be worth it, because it's a cool premise of, it's a what is it? It's the greatest hit developer kind of not bringing in combat techniques, but just bringing in common sense or other aspects into life, into an isekai, into a fantasy novel life, to make their lives easier. They'll ruin their knees if they don't bend correctly, kind of thing. And it is an interesting thing that I am excited to see further. We can move on to, I think, one of my favorite series that came out this month. Skool of Street. I know I got Bingo already, but it does cover two Bingo tasks, which is unique genre, because it is a sports webtoon. It is the first sports webtoon of the year, by the way. The first one. There's currently 2 out. One came out in October and one came out in September. It is the first sports webtoon, and it also focuses on idols. Also, I do love the Skool of Street kind of vibe it has. It is about idols. Our dude gets dumped when moving to a new school, but he was about to go to this idol group's signing with his girlfriend. So he goes anyways, because he's a big fan of it anyways. And when he's signing it, he's getting all this signing stuff, and he starts crying because his girlfriend broke up with him. And they're all like, yeah, you're allowed to cry. You're crying because you're seeing us. But only one girl is like, I can see why you're crying. You're not crying because you met us. You can't ever fool me. and this is her, like, this is his like main idol stan. He loves this idol. Haley, I think her name is. Yeah, Haley. He loves this idol. And then turns out that Haley's younger sister actually goes to the same school and is a part of the dance club. And practices dancing, and then he accidentally kind of like becomes intermingled with her because her page is about to go and he's about to jump and grab it. And it's a cool take on, you know, idols and sports and school, because there's a lot of things that are being set up to be interesting. Idols are cool, but one of the big things is dancing. Now I'll say, because it's definitely a sports webtoon because it focuses so much on dancing, a lot of the different mechanics, and a lot of different plots are involving dancing, because she's afraid, she has not a fear of public speech, just like a fear of being perceived, of dancing in public and dancing in front of a crowd. So it's him kind of teaching her how to like not be so afraid of dancing in public, and also her teaching him how to dance, and they kind of like learn to dance together in a sense, because he does a bunch of gymnastic stuff and she's, you know, idol sister, so she's learning how to dance and all this fun stuff, and it's going pretty great. I'll say I don't like sports. I dislike sports. I think they're pretty boring. Every single sports webtoon I've read was so good, and that's continued. The 2 sports series that have come out this year are bangers. I'm really loving the art style, the direction it's going, the characters, the sports related things with dancing and gymnastics. It's so much fun, and I love this kind of take on idol stuff, and I'm really enjoying this series. We can move on to our next series. Snow and Briar is by the same author as Lucky as Unlucky Gets, I think is the correct title of the series. It's a mouthful. It's about like a leprechaun or a lucky guy. Same author. So if you've read that series, you know it is incredibly goofy. It is a comedy series through and through. And this series is equally as goofy because we follow Snow White, which is Prince Snow White, by the way. Prince Snow White is a dude so beautiful, people drug and kidnap him to try to marry him. He's so beautiful that everyone immediately falls in love with him. It feels very, I said this in the short, it feels very Emperor's New Groove kind of thing, where, sorry, him as a baby is hilarious, where our main character is kind of like a spoiled rich dude who is like the prince, or like kind of like gonna be the next ruler, XYZ, and to be, and then they're trying to like, the father and the mother are trying to like find like a good fit or a good wife for Prince Snow White, and he's like, I'll only marry someone as beautiful as me, and then the stepmother, which is very like evil stepmom kind of thing, kind of tricks Snow White into going into like a kind of like a secretive kingdom, like I think it's the Thorn Kingdom, and the Princess Thorn or whatever is just this like beefy, tall woman who's built like a 3-door fridge. Like she's like actively like monstrous. Like it's terrifying how like big she is. And she's like, I'm gonna marry you. You picked me. And he thinks that she's gonna eat her because he thinks she's a monster. I mean, look at their size difference. So it goes into this like, oh, they're actually gonna be like engaged and they're gonna get married. And I think knowing this kind of trope, it feels like it's going down a path of he is not a good person, but as they bond and as they connect, he actually falls in love with her and they grow together. And I really hope that's where it goes, because I can see both of these characters being very good, having good chemistry together, being able to bounce off each other very well. And the comedy is great. I'm very excited to see where this series is gonna go. I also love the size difference between our female lead and our male lead. It's great. We can move on to our next series. love Sickubus. It's a very, very cool series, but a kind of lame name. But it makes sense if you understand. We follow a succubus. So speedrunning the lore of this world. Earth and Gaia are two separate worlds, but they kind of become intertwined. And Gaia residents, the Gaia planet residents, kind of like creatures, monsters, werewolves, succubusi, other kind of fantasy creatures, starts moving into the earth, and then they have to bond together, and then some creatures are given like threat levels, and the succubus is a threat level red because it needs other people's life force to survive. But being a succubus, falling in love with a succubus as they take your life, it has a similar vibe to that, where they can only take the life force of people they've established deep bonds with. Very cool. But also, I think equally cool, this is the succubus. I love what they did with the succubus's design. It's so cool. Like, you could have gone so traditional. You could have gone so, like, too much, basically. But they make her, like, insectoid, like this fantasy, like, it's genuinely pop off. This design pops off, I'll say. I don't care. Like, I don't, it's not that I don't care much, but I think I try to avoid speaking about, like, designs and art because I don't know anything about that. Because I'm just a goofy guy who speaks about Webtoon series online. But man, is this design genuinely so good for a succubus? Like the insectoid, the antennas, like almost like the plating, the elf ears is cool. Like, it looks really good, and I'm very glad that out of all the ways they could have taken a succubus, they've gone this direction. There's also goblins, there's werewolves, or I think there's werewolves. There's like a bunch of different ones, and they all have their own unique abilities in a sense. So it is exciting to see this world. And the reason why it's called Love Sickubus is because she, while trying to bond and collect life force from an individual, who is, what is his name? His name, Claude. While trying to get the life force out of a human Claude, she falls in love with him, and is too, like, in love with him to actually steal his life force away from him. So, the idea of a succubus, a love succubus, is love sick. Love Sick. It's a cool title when you think about it, but when I first saw it, I was like, wow, that's a lame title. But thinking about it now, it's pretty cool. It's clever. It's clever to say the least. And I know some series, the titles are either way too specific or just way too broad. Like, there's no in between. So I think this is a clever title, and the world building, it's all been really good so far. We can move on to our next series. Return of the Runebound Professor is another series I have to quickly speedrun the lore to explain what's going on because it's a little confusing. So when people die, their souls go through like a stairway and they get to like be reincarnated. Every soul gets recycled into a new body, either on Earth or like a fantasy one, or it doesn't matter where you go, as long as you're like vaguely conscious, vaguely like humanoid in a sense, you'll be thrown into that body kind of thing. Either someone who's dying or someone who's being born, XYZ. There's a bunch of reasons why you'll be reincarnated. But usually when you get reincarnated, you don't remember your past life. But however, our main character remembers his past life because while he was being reincarnated, which involves going into like reincarnation waters, there's like a reincarnation goddess there, and the reincarnation. Hold on, let me get to that point. But it turns out there's a lot of types of. She says one of the many goddesses of reincarnation, so it looks like there's a bunch of different gods of reincarnation, which means I think this other person is another god of reincarnation. Possibly, they don't tell you if he is or isn't. Anyways, they fight and their blood gets into the water. And then when he goes into the water to be reincarnated, both their bloods, the gods of the bloods, mix, and he drinks that blood. So that way when he gets reincarnated, A, he remembers his past life, which was as a music teacher, but also B, whenever he dies in his new body, it's basically like his soul is linked there forever. So he keeps on getting thrown back into his body no matter how many times he dies. Other than that aspect, he dies a lot again. But other than that aspect, the world is pretty cool, I'll say. The world of this webtoon is pretty cool, where we follow a world of magic. He's a magical professor at this place, and everyone hates him. I think everyone despises him. He's not a good person. Everyone just does not like him. So him like being a teacher and having to learn how to be a teacher, just how to teach magic when he doesn't even know the magic itself. It's a fun way of being like, ha ha ha, let's learn together kind of thing. But also, I'll say the magic in this world is really cool. What is the logo again? That's fine. The magic in this world is really cool because magic takes the form of runes, and you have to fill runes to get certain magic about it. So there's like fire runes and wind runes, and then he learns a vibration rune eventually. Like there's all these different runes that you can learn, and like people have runes that they can fill up. It's pretty cool and pretty in-depth, and I'm very much enjoying the lore and the world building of this series, and it's going very well, I think. But we can also move on to our next series. The Returnee's Road to Retirement is a pretty interesting series. It is a reverse isekai. Yeah, it follows awakened ones, hunters, systems, all that stuff, and that's a bingo thing, even though I got bingo already. It follows that stuff, and we follow someone who's retired, who second tier awakened one. After years saving, he has buildings now, he's retired, he's living the life, he doesn't have to worry about money ever again, and then he accidentally regresses, and he has to get back to that retirement. It's a cool series, actually. It's a cool take on the trope. A reincarnation trope in a reverse isekai is not uncommon, and it's very common actually, because regressions are a good way of making our main character know a lot and be knowledgeable about the future, so making the best moves and, you know, the 5D chess, whatever, big brain thing. But it's a cool take on this regression thing because he doesn't want to go back in time. He's already kind of like hit his peak. He's already got it. He's already done. Like he's done. He's done with life. He doesn't need to go back in time anymore. He's retired. He has enough money to live a comfortable life. So he goes back in time and he's like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna speed run my retirements. Like, I'm gonna just like do as much as I can, as efficiently as I can, to retire as soon as I can. He's like, I want to retire in 3 years, and I think that's kind of funny. Another aspect of this series has to do with found family, where he kind of finds this girl from the world where like the reverse isekai is coming from, and he trains her up and they become allies kind of thing. Even though she's supposed to be like a big threat later on in the series, he basically like saves her so she's not going to be a threat anymore. I like this like found family aspect of reverse isekais and isekais, especially when it comes to fantasy stuff. So I think it's a very exciting take on that. It's been interesting so far. So we can also move on to our next series. Forged in Flames, the Peacemaker is definitely, oh my god, I almost knocked my water bottle over, is one of my favorite series that have come out this year. This month was great for me, by the way. I am eating good this month. Forged in Flames, the Peacemaker, or I'll just probably call it the Peacemaker, is a hyper pure fantasy series. No isekais, no reverse isekais, no books, no video games, nothing. It's just fantasy, pure fantasy, and man, I'm digging it. The fantasy comes in, sorry about that, it's pure fantasy and it's great. And the main premise is we follow the Peacemaker. The Peacemaker is a person who revolutionized the world of magic stones. He basically purified magic stones into something called ether. And ether is so valuable to people that magic stones aren't even considered a thing anymore. So after revolutionizing the world of ether, most people just ignore magic stones, except our main character, who uses magic stones to kind of do things together. His name is Sage. He uses magic stones. Oh, sorry, no, other way around. He uses ether to create magic stones. But then everyone ignores ether now, basically, because they consider ether as like kind of second class. They don't think ether is all that useful. So so he uses his smarts, basically. He's not like a skilled fighter. He doesn't really know any cool skills, but he knows how to use ether to help people. So then he gets caught up with, I think, what is pretty obviously gonna be a red dragon. Like, this is a dragon. This is definitely a dragon. Like, you can't tell me that's not a dragon. He gets basically caught up with a dragon, and together they kind of form. They don't form. They're part of a guild called, I think, like the Red Pepper Guild or something like that. And then he joins the Red Pepper Guild and then starts adventuring with them. And man, is that like, it's such a simple premise, right? But there's so much in it already that I'm so excited to see, because they just set up so many different things. For example, they set up the fact that these dungeons are appearing, and the Red Pepper Guild is trying to like stop the dungeons before they blow up. They also set up that the Peacemaker, the ancient hero that revolutionized magic stones, might not have actually been helped by the dragon, but instead might have actually conned the dragon into helping him and then just booked it and ran away. Like, they set up so much cool stuff that I'm so excited to see, and I'm not gonna say delivering on it, because it's been like 3 episodes have come out so far, other than the 7 that have been out recent, or besides the 7 that have come out when it came out. But it's been a blast. I love the magic. I love the guild. I love the world. It's so good. I'm so excited to see where this series is going. It is definitely a series that is meant for me. You know, it is a very fantasy series, and I am loving it. It is great. So we can move on to our next series. Disaster is always by my side. Ignore that in my short I said despair is always by my side. That was an oopsie. Disaster is always by my side is by the same author as Good Day to Be a Dog and See You in My 19th Life. The general idea is that our main character, female lead, she's like the daughter of like the CEO or whatever, head of the company, chairman of the company, that's what it is. Daughter, the head of the company, whatever nonsense. So she's gonna be like, she's working her way up to like either take over the position or yada yada yada. And then she also has like a toxic stepbrother and stepmom who like are trying to steal the company from underneath her. Anyways, she gets a letter to go to this house. And this house is owner of this god. He's a god and he banishes evil spirits. And then she goes into this house and then she goes there for like around 3 hours by her time. But it's actually 10 years later that she's trapped in this house for 10 years, but only feels like 3 hours. So 10 years have gone by and everything has moved on and she's back. And she has to use him and he has to use her because they both have things that they want from each other. And it's enjoyable. And it comes from a strong basis because Good Day to Be a Dog and See You in My 19th Life are both really solid series. And of course, it's going to be a romance series. It's building up to be an enemies to lovers series where they obviously don't get along at first, but as time goes on, they start building up. And that's not even like pure speculation either, because he has visions of her in the future where she is like someone near and dear to him. So, you know, I think I'm pretty confidently calling it enemies to lovers there. But it's enjoyable. And I like the characters. I like the chemistry, all that fun stuff. It's a good romance series. And if you like Good Day to Be a Dog or See You in My 19th Life, you're going to like this series because it's been good so far. We can finally move on to our last series that's come out this month. Dead Mansion follows an orphanage. These are like orphans, and they're trained up to be assassins. They're trained up to be like killers, basically. And they follow their parent no matter what. They have 3, I'll explain why I'm getting into this in a sec, but they have 3 kind of rules when they're trained. The first question, the first training is like, you always have to listen to a parent. Second one, I forgot. What are the commandments? Here are the commandments. First one is always listen to a parent. Yeah, the word of a parent is absolute. You have to follow 2, power shall not be wielded without the parent's blessing. But then 3, the power may be wielded if the parent is in danger. And we follow a kid who was sold, like a very good kid, not a good kid, but a very, what is it? The best child they've ever produced. Good kid. The best child they ever produced, but they sent him to the wrong place. They were going to send him to Japan. They sent him to Korea instead. And while he's in Korea, he kind of can't like do anything. They actually do a fake out where it's like, oh no, wait, this is a confusing thing to explain. So, The series led us to believe that this guy with glasses is the main character. But then it turns out that the blonde boy over here, the guy that kind of looks like a hooligan, is actually the person who once was part of the assassin raising up children thing. And then because of, you know, his mom being very nice to everyone, she says any friend of this kid, my kid, is like a son to me. So because she said that, he now treats her as her son, or he now views her as her son. So he does all this stuff in order to kind of follow her the best she can. So like every order she gives, even if she doesn't think she's giving orders, like, oh, make sure you eat up, make sure you drink water, make sure you do that. Oh, I wish I could get revenge on the people who hurt my son. That's later. That's a different thing. Ignore that. So he has to do everything she says, basically. And it's a really interesting premise. I do enjoy it a lot, and I think it's very cool. Also very cool, it's in the same world as Lookism. Because it's in the same world as Manager Kim, which is the same world as Lookism. Let me find it real quick. Yeah, it's right here, because of the White Tiger Job Center. These are characters from Lookism, from Manager Kim, from, I forgot, there's a bunch of other series where these guys are from. But, you know, it's in the same world, and I think that's pretty cool. And it makes sense. It has a very similar vibe to Lookism and Manager Kim. Very combat-oriented. By the way, combat is so good. The combat is great. The combat in this series, amazing. The Lookism series has some of the best combat in series, I think, ever. Because I don't know, man, they kill it with the combat in this and every other series. Oh my god, this is a tangent. If you read Lookism, oh my god, the most recent arc with the hunt for gun, oh, it's so good. It's so wildly good. I can't believe the guy has a second phase. That's spoiling anyways. Overall, this month was very weird. It hit kind of like a low for like, more Webtoon original series I have to read, and then randomly ramped up to be super good. I love Skool of Street. I hate that Skool of Street is called Skool of Street and not Street School or something, or School Street or something. It's just very annoying to pronounce. It's such a nitpick of a series that I really like. Dead Mansion is great. I really like Peacemaker. Honestly, this month has been like a weird low and then a very good high for, I'll be honest, most of the year. So I hope you guys have been enjoying this month's series as well. There we go, that's how you say it. And if you haven't, just let me know. Why not? Which series don't you like? Which series do you like? Do you disagree? Do you think Skool of Street is garbage? No, it's not. Please don't be mean to me. Please let me know what you guys think about these series. Let me know your favorite as well, because I won bingo. That's my bingo reward. Tell me your favorite series. Honestly, October's been great. September has also been pretty good as well. From what I remember, September's had a lot of good series. Has had also more weird series, but that's Webtoon. It's always gonna have a weird series. So I've been really enjoying this. Hope you guys have been enjoying this as well, and I'll catch you on your next break. Take care.